Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today we are looking into what is probably the most pure, everyday photography camera, as well as being the most expensive everyday camera that you could possibly buy, and that is the Leica Q2 Monochrom. Now, a bit of a disclaimer as well as some background. The good people at KEH sent over this camera for me to kind of test out and review. It is not mine. I do not get to keep it. I'm sending it back tomorrow, which is very, very sad for me. But that being said, as someone who is appreciative of the support they gave me in lending me this incredible camera, I'll put a link to it down in the description, and by the time this video goes live, most likely this camera will actually be on their site and available for purchase. And then I am just the person that, for fun, I bring a camera everywhere. I bring a camera when I go out to eat with some friends. I bring a camera to the movies. I bring a camera when I travel. I bring a camera to family events. I bring a camera to Christmas, Easter, birthday parties, everything. Now, viewers of this channel know that I have a giant affinity for the X100 series, and especially the X100V. And so I hope that you are all not thinking I'm cheating on you and that camera while reviewing this one, but I'm definitely going to do a review comparing the two cameras to each other, as well as a video comparing the Q2 and the M10 with a 28mm Summicron to the X100V with the WCL adapter, which converts the 35 into about a 28, and the XC4 from Fujifilm with the 18f2. I'm doing a video comparing all of those and then giving my takes on what is kind of the best setup for whom. So subscribe if you aren't already to make sure you see that video when it gets published. Now, the Q2 in general is a fantastic camera. Definitely. It has a 47.3 megapixel sensor, which is the same resolution as the sensor that is in the Leica SL2. And especially for something that is this size, having such a huge sensor is really, really surprising and phenomenal. And then you pair that sensor on the Q2 with a 28mm f1.7 lens, which actually gives you the ability to both shoot a lot in low light and have shallow depth of field on a wide angle lens, which is pretty hard to achieve unless you are at sub 2 on a full frame sensor. So the first thing I want to go over is just the general handling and build quality of the camera. The most shocking thing, as someone that is used to the Leica M10 system with my 28 Summicron, clearly they're very similar cameras in terms of design and size. You know, the Q2 is actually a little bit smaller this way. You can see that there's less space right here. But then one of the things that, again, I was most surprised in when I was comparing the two, is I'm clearly very, very familiar with the M10 and the 28 Summicron, was just how light this was. I guess I was assuming, since the lens is so much bigger than it is on the 28 Summicron, and then obviously a lot bigger than it is on the X100V, which is, you know, just a tiny, tiny little lens, that maybe this lens and camera combination wouldn't actually be that great to carry around, but I was definitely very, very mistaken in that. The combination only weighs 734 grams, which is really actually super light considering the 28 Summilux alone weighs 440 grams. Now again, I'm going to compare the X100V to this separately, but for those who are interested in kind of just general size and weight, the X100V only weighs 478 grams, so it is definitely significantly lighter. But that being said, it wasn't something that kept me from taking this anywhere. If you are into the whole Leica setup, especially with the SL2 system, this is definitely a very easy play for you. It takes the same batteries as the SL2 and SL2S, making that whole system really easy. You don't have to bring extra chargers, anything like that. It does only have one card slot though, and you can definitely see that there might be even more room for another one. I don't know what's going on there, and clearly I'm not a camera engineer by any means, but I do find it odd that it seems like there's space for one and then they didn't include it. But having dual card slots on this would make it a recommendation for wedding photography for sure. I know a lot of people use it for wedding photography anyway, and my M10s don't have dual card slots either. But it would definitely be an easier sell for a wedding photographer to have dual slots in here. And if it's at all possible, that would be phenomenal. Now, that being said as well, it doesn't have any other ports. So there's not a USB-C on the side or on the bottom. There's no headphone jack or flash sync or just any of the other stuff that you would normally find on the side of a camera. And that is definitely a shame because I feel like the 28mm focal length, while not great for vlogging, but someone like me that has pretty long arms, I could get away with it in a pinch if I needed to. And definitely something that if you brought a tripod and did some talking head stuff or whatever, pairing it with one of the small wireless kits would make a really easy play here. But there's no way to plug in an external microphone or anything like that. So if you are considering using a Q2 for video at all, you're stuck with these tiny little microphones up there, and then you're gonna have to sync audio in post or something if you decide to record something into like a lav mic or something. But the thing also that would make this a good play for a video camera, which I'm pretty disappointed in Leica for not including, is that the lens actually has image stabilization. And I'm actually surprised that I don't hear about that more when people are talking about the Q2. You actually get some stabilization, which makes the 28mm focal length even more usable. So Leica, if you are somehow listening, maybe finding a way to add a USB-C for charging and offloading images, as well as maybe a headphone jack somewhere if you are including video in the camera, would be a very welcomed addition. And then to wrap up the video portion, which I don't think a lot of people necessarily care about, but I do think this has a lot of potential for a kind of like run and gun, bring one camera setup with you. I feel like if you're going to offer video and you have the capabilities, which I do believe it has with the processor inside, it'd be really great to have some sort of log in the actual Q2 and the Q2 Monochrome. Now, I've been told that this has a lot of the same internals from the SL2 in terms of image processor, and obviously the sensor is different because it's monochrome, but on the Q2, it should be fairly similar. So there's a few things that are pretty frustrating to me out of this that I feel like should be included but aren't. The main thing of which just is the main modes for focusing. On the Q2, you have multi-field, spot, field, and face detect. But on the SL2 and the SL2S, you have a few other modes, including a tracking mode, which allows you to pick a point and then allow the camera to track it. But I think the general person buying this is going to be at least wanting to be a fairly avid photographer, so adding more advanced settings, even if the person doesn't use them, you would think would be something that they would want to do. Now, all that being said, obviously the Q2 platform, the lens, the image sensor, all that kind of stuff are phenomenal. But the thing that makes this camera special and very unique, and it's one of probably less than 10 production cameras that have ever been made to only have a monochrome sensor. So in a normal camera sensor, you have multiple color sensor arrays that kind of are interpolated and then made into your final image. But in a monochrome sensor, the sensor is only capturing light. It's not capturing any color data at all. But the only thing that's being recorded is the amount of light that is bouncing off or being reflected onto or being driven by different objects. So what you see is actually what you get in terms of the actual image coming out, because it is recording just the light that is coming into the camera and no color information at all. So I actually did a test video recently where I added color filters onto the front of this to change the contrast and whatnot and change the amount of light coming in from different color channels if you want to check that out. But if you are a photographer that is used to changing your black and white within an HSL panel, you definitely don't have the ability to do that because there is no color information in here. So you are only able to make those adjustments via filters beforehand or just by manually doing things with contrast and whatnot afterwards. That being said, the image quality and resolution and high ISO performance out of this camera are absolutely mind-blowing. For someone that, if you looked around my office right now and looked at all of the cameras that I have, you wouldn't believe this, but from a style perspective, I am pretty much a minimalist. And so for me, a lot of our family memories and things like that, when we make prints, are usually in black and white anyway. And so this camera, as a personal family memory-making tool, actually makes a lot of sense, and I have been thrilled with the images coming out of this thing. since it has a monochrome sensor and it's only picking up one kind of channel of light, you get significantly better performance in low light, and it makes this thing able to be used in so many situations. One of the things that I think looks the worst in general high ISO files is that color noise. And one of the things I kind of joked around about a long time ago is that black and white covers a multitude of sins, which color noise is definitely one of those things. But you can definitely push this camera to significant heights because you have the ability to shoot at 100,000 ISO. And while not clean or perfect by any means, the stuff that comes out even at 100,000 is definitely usable for personal use. And I would say even 50,000, I would deliver that at a wedding. So pairing a sensor that does monochrome at ridiculously high ISOs and is generally usable for a vast majority of that range, pairing that with a 28mm focal length that allows you to hand hold at much lower shutter speeds anyway, at a 1.7 aperture, which allows a lot of light in, and then the lens has image stabilization within it, allows you to just get photos that honestly just should not be possible in a camera of this size or format. So over the past month or so, I've used this camera almost every day, just on walks with my kids, documenting their life. And honestly, the only downside is its focusing capabilities. I would say that it gives you the ability to use face tracking, but the face tracking on this takes a while to acquire and doesn't do that good of a job of being kind of sticky to a particular subject. So a lot of times I've been trying to figure out like whether I want to use face detect or if I want to use some sort of, wide multi-field. And honestly, I found multi-field to be the best use case for me. Unfortunately, I do wish the face detect would be a lot better, and I don't really know why it's not. But I'm fairly easily able to change this thing into manual focus really quick if I need it to. And while I definitely don't prefer it as much as the Leica M10, it does give me that ability, which is fantastic. And overall, I didn't miss that many photos with this camera, even wide open at 1.7. So while even like the X100 has better focusing than this, it's not the end of the world and didn't necessarily ruin my experience with it. So overall, if you are someone that likes black and white photography and you want an everyday camera and you don't mind them being in black and white, this is probably the best camera for the vast majority of people that you could possibly get. And again, it's another one of those Leica cameras that, despite the enormous price tag, is something that I am, again, trying to think of cameras and things that I can sell to find a way to acquire one. Because I think the simplicity of only using this in black and white, especially for memories, for street photography, for all that stuff, breaks things down into what matters most in an image. And for me, on my personal life and things, that is just like moments and expressions and memories. It's just another one of those things that strips away other distractions that keep me from overthinking different scenes and whatnot. And again, it's really making me try to scheme up a way to get one of these for myself. So thanks so much for watching. I definitely have a review video that is comparing this to the X100V as well as that 28mm video in general. So subscribe if you aren't already to see that. You can do that down here in this little icon. You can jump on Patreon and support me there. And then you can jump into one of these other videos and see more from me on this channel.